Maharaj, and I'm a director of the CFA Society and will be the moderator for today's proceedings. This session is just a part of our candidate services outreach, and it's designed not only for current level one candidates, but also for anyone who may be considering doing the CFA program and are still deciding whether or not it's the right path for you. Before I introduce our esteemed speakers, I would just like to take a couple minutes to do a brief overview of the CFA program in general, for the benefit of those who may not be familiar with it. So the CFA designation is a globally recognized credential, and it's widely considered to be the gold standard in the finance industry. The program consists of 3 levels covering a broad range of topics, including portfolio management, economics, financial reporting analysis, as well as ethics, right? Apart from passing all 3 exams, in order to get the charter, you also need to accumulate at least 3 years of relevant work experience, right? But the CFA Level 1 exam in particular, which is the focus of this webinar, consists of 180 multiple choice questions split into 2 sessions of 135 minutes each. So in total, we're looking at about a 4.5 hour exam. It's also worth noting that the CFA program is widely considered one of the most difficult exams in the world, second to only maybe actuarial exams. The historical pass rate with respect to level 1 is roughly 41%, and that's over the past decade. And despite the low pass rate, successful candidates typically um, suggest that at least 300 hours plus of study time is required for passing the exam. So it's against this backdrop that we felt it was important to host a session such as this, to give you all a realistic picture of what to expect in terms of the lead up to the exam as well as the exam itself. Recently, the CFA would have introduced a new component with respect to the practical skills module. So we also touch on that as well. And hopefully, we provide some useful insights in terms of our experience so that it could hopefully help you in terms of your exam, right? So without further ado, allow me to introduce some of the esteemed speakers. So firstly, I would like to introduce Mr. Pernel Roberts. He's currently the president of the CFA Society of Trinidad and Tobago. He is an investment manager as well as lecturer by profession, and he has been a charter holder since 2023. Secondly, we have Mr. Marc Dwarika. He's also a director of the CFA Society. He's a treasury manager by profession and has been a charter holder since 2024. And last but not least, we have Mr. Savio, an investment analyst and one of the most recent charter holders locally, having been awarded his charter a little less than 3 months ago, so freshly minted, right? In terms of the flow for today's session, we would like to spend around 45 minutes in discussion. So we'll talk about the things logically from the point of registering for the exam to leading up to the exam day, as well as touch on the practical skills module, as I just mentioned, right? And then we will leave the last 15 minutes of the session to have an open Q&A. So if you have any questions that we may not have covered during the broader session, you can feel free to throw your questions in the chat and we try to answer as much as we can. Right, so that's basically the flow. So I think we could go ahead and get started in terms of the questions I have for the panel. So I want to bring in Pernel first, given your experience as a lecturer, as well as, of course, doing the charter yourself. From my experience, there was a bit of a jump between what I did at the graduate level in terms of finance, and then what I found when starting to study for the CFA Level 1 exam. Right, it was a bit of a shock, to be honest, in terms of the material. So while we would have covered some things, what you quickly found is that the CFA program is pretty rigorous. So I just wanted to find out from you, given that you went to a different institution as the one I did, was that the same experience for you? And what advice would you have for candidates that may be thinking um, they don't need to put in as much time and effort in terms of studying if they did an undergrad in, let's say, finance or econ because they quote unquote already have the knowledge?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. That's a very good question. I think to kick things off, as you correctly said, it's coming from university. You know, you approach exams very last minute. You say, all right, I can handle this. You might study for the last week and then still come out with a decent grade, or study for 1 month or less and still come out with a decent grade. But I think that what CFA forced or brought out of me is that I realized that, okay, this is a lot more than you expect. The content is a lot more than you expect. So I think that making that jump, as you correctly said, from university exams into CFA, it requires a different approach. It requires you to be a bit more consistent and a bit more consistent from earlier. I think for me, I would have underestimated the breadth of what you're trying to cover within CFA. Because while with university exams, you're doing like 3, 4, 5 courses per semester, and the exams on different days, and you get to like study for economics one day, then the next day you might have an accounts exam. But CFA, it brings all of these topics into one day, one exam. So it really forces you to really cover a lot more work. I think that that's really and truly what happened to me. I would have underestimated the breadth of work that needed to be covered. I mean, thankfully, I was able to do this, do the sufficient amount of work to get through the exam. But I think that that's the primary thing that I see a lot of candidates do, right? You underestimate the exam because you came from university where you studied the night before and still came out with a good score. So to me, that's the key thing in terms of starting the whole process of understanding that CFA is not an easy road, right? It takes a lot out of you and it requires some sacrifice, a lot more sacrifice, I'd say, than what it would have been for me at the undergrad level.
Thanks, Pernel. I guess it was the same for me as well, right? But I want to bring in Mark here. So there's 10 topic areas with respect to level one. Um, was there any particular order with respect to how you studied in terms of the topics? And from your experience, what was the most challenging topic?
Andrew, before I proceed, I just want to say thanks and for inviting me. And I think like if I was doing level one right now, this would have been something valuable way back when. So just want to thanks for inviting, and I hope the participants have take a lot of benefit from this session. So what topics did I tackle first? I tackled financial statement analysis and economics. The reason for that is because it's so high level and it kind of feeds into the other topics. You understand where the inputs for your DDM model, your bond valuations come from the economic section. You understand why you make certain portfolio management decisions based on the economic climate. And yeah, that kind of led my overall study strategy. I kind of approached it from a top-down perspective, and it made the kind of smaller, specialized topics, especially at level one, more understandable as you kind of coming fresh into the curriculum.
Okay. And Savio, in terms of after you registered, like what was your initial month of preparation? How did you structure it? What did it look like? To kind of help some of the candidates, um, prepare, like how they should really map out
Mm.
the months leading up to the exam.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So, when you now register, it can look like a very daunting war ahead of you, right? But with all things, you need to have a plan. And the very first thing that I did in my experience was I sat down and actually planned out what I will do with my time leading up to the exam, right? So if it was the case where I had 6 months to the exam, I know for myself that for the first 4 months, I'm going to focus on just getting through the content and not just getting through the content. It's you want to build that foundation. You want to make sure you understand the concepts. And I think that is the most important thing with this CFA that a lot of people do. And as Pernel mentioned, they would underestimate it's something that is very common. Um, you can't underestimate it, right? You need to ensure that from the get-go you set that plan and you tackle each subject with your goal, not just to complete the topic, but understand the down to the first principles of what each is trying to get across to you, right? So that was my first few months, just setting that plan, sticking to it, treating it like a non-negotiable essentially, and just spending at least 2 to 3 hours every day. Of course, allocating more time on weekends, but just going through and building that core foundation, getting that formative learning in. Yeah.
Thanks, Savio. So as you mentioned, that study schedule. So we know most persons who do level one or CFA in general are either full-time or part-time workers, right? So of course, after a hard day at work, it's very difficult when you're tired and exhausted to open a textbook and read this stuff and in terms of motivation. So I kind of open it up to anyone. Any advice for someone, a candidate who's working full-time and maybe struggling to keep up in terms of the balance between studying and work? And what advice would you give them to kind of get through that period?
If I could just jump in off the gun as I just completed, right? So, well, in my experience, speaking anecdotally, there's two things I would say. The first one being, and it's core to the previous answer I gave in setting that plan for yourself, right? One of the benefits of setting a plan is ensuring that you have, of course, time to complete what you intend to do, but also having some, I guess, buffer time in case of any sort of emergency. And I consider tiredness after work an emergency, right? I'm not saying that you should just utilize all your free time and just as you reach home, knock out on your bed and fall asleep and say I'll do it in the morning or something. I'm not saying that at all, but what I'm saying is that in the first instance, it's very good to ensure that you have some buffer time so that you're not pressed to the wall every single day, knowing that if I don't finish this, it's over, right? And the second thing, and this was more of a personal choice, but I mean, I recommend it to everyone as well, if you're able to, you want to. You see this thing they call coffee? I cannot tell you how much coffee I consume in the entire process leading up to the exam day, right? Price mat, I can't say how much they saw me, but coffee was definitely something that I would have used to give me the extra go. And at the end of a very long day or the start of a very early morning, just getting some kind of stimulant in me to try and just get through and power through, to stick to the goal, right? So having some buffer time to, if you really need to take a nap or you're too tired to work a day, number one, and two, coffee.
Now,
Thanks, Savio. Yeah, Pernel, go ahead.
yeah, no, I think, yeah, thanks, Savio. I think I was Savio would have already, I could have lost the important parts of it. Just add what worked for me. I think that oftentimes you try to look for the perfect environment to start studying. So you might come home, when I said the perfect cup of coffee, perfect cup of tea, you want to be able to set aside 4 hours to just look at and do some work. You need the weather to be a specific way in order for you to start studying. And I think that in itself delays the process. So I think for me, the key thing was just to get something in. Like sometimes I could only do half an hour and that is it, right? Because to me, it's about the consistency. The consistency beats the imperfection. So to me, that's really and truly what worked for me. So sometimes even on my way to work, so like I come from Trigona some days, you see towards the traffic, I just put on a video. I might not listen to it perfectly, but you know, I might just listen to what they say and I might just go on YouTube. This is one of the topics give me trouble within quantitative methods. I'll just put on a video about it. So it's finding ways to even like squeeze it into your daily routine without it taking too much more effort. And then lastly, coming out of Port of Spain, there's a lot of traffic. So I'll just stay back like an extra hour and a half from work and just do some reading, do some practice. So that's what I try to do. I didn't try to seek out the perfect setting. I need to go to Starbucks and buy a matcha latte. And then after, I didn't try to do all those different things to create the perfect environment. To me, it's more about finding ways to be consistent. And that's what I think helped me throughout the whole CFA journey, not just level one.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Pernel.
Yeah, some sentiments. CFA actually got me addicted to coffee, so thanks. Yeah, but similar strategies to these gentlemen. Just one, I guess, divergence from Pernel. I don't like traffic to this day, so I would actually leave extra early, reach and work early, and study until like my work starts, quote unquote. So that was like my all right. There's no one in work. The office is quiet. I got a free hour and a half, I guess, to do my studies and then jump right into work. I mean, it's great to also study and then see it kind of being applied right after. So just having that, I guess, fun with it makes sense. One other thing I did was I kind of use videos more so than readings. I found that a faster way and more efficient way to consume content. I guess that depends on if you use a prep provider or not, but just the way I learn it, I prefer videos and I prefer someone speaking to me. So that's kind of the gist of how I would approach it, from at least aside from what the gentleman already said. And coffee again.
Thanks, Mark. So as you mentioned, study prep providers. So when I did the exam, there were providers, but I think now it's far more proliferation of different providers. Me personally, I kind of just stuck with the CFA curriculum and took my own notes, and I use free resources. So there was one provider that posted a lot of videos on YouTube. But from your experiences, did you use a third party provider? Was it useful? Did you think you could have passed the exam without a third party if you did use one?
Well, I guess since I just spoke about a third party, I'll jump in here. Yes, I use a third party provider. Well, I mean, no shame in saying it. Marc Meldrum I would have used, and to this day I still use his videos on a professional basis. So it's not like these things are just a one and done. Some of these prep providers provide professional advice after the fact, so there's a lot of value to it. And as I said before, his content was more so videos over notes. He had notes there, but that's primarily what I use was the videos. Other than that, he also would have used a lot of practical examples, like real world examples in his teachings. So you kind of blend the theory with the practicality and how you would see it in your jobs. And well, the core thing about Marc Meldrum, for those who use him here, the man is Jones. So yeah, I did, and I think it's a benefit if you don't like just reading all day.
Pernel, Savio, any?
Sure, I don't mind going after. So I actually didn't really use, at least for level one, I primarily use the CFA curriculum. I did use a bit of the Schrazer notes when I was down on crunch time, just to shorten. At that point in time, I really wasn't familiar with a lot of the prep providers too. So I saw Marc Meldrum's videos on YouTube. So I looked at some of his videos at that point in time in terms of like how to approach studying. He would have covered. So like Mark spoke about before in terms of his own structure and approach to different topics and which one he started with first. So I looked at Marc Meldrum videos from that point of view and some of his explanations. I more started to use the prep providers in level 2 and 3. And I mean, I had the same experience as Mark, but prep providers I think are useful, particularly for working people where you don't have the time to go through all of the material for yourself, especially if you're very busy. And they kind of like pull out the key parts of it for you and also explain it. And as Mark said, they really do it in an engaging way, particularly in Marc Meldrum. But I just use Schrazer notes and the curriculum, and at least for level 1. And then from level 2 and level 3, things change a bit.
Okay.
Yes, and to piggyback off of it, I'm listening to Pernel speak, and I swear we had the same experience because in my instance, at level 1, I just use the curriculum, right? But of course, for level 2 and 3, approaching new challenges, this is why I also plug that you should not feel any how to use a prep provider. The institute, yes, they give you all the tools, but of course, depending on your learning style, you may be able to digest information a lot differently. And the one thing I'll say about these prep providers, and in my experience with Marc Meldrum, to add to what was said already, is the ability to take these, I guess, complex ideas and just break it down into the most digestible, most easily understandable bits that just stick with you, right? And yeah, as Mark said, he's just, in my opinion, a goat, if you will, at just taking these difficult concepts and just feeding it to you in a way that you'll always remember, right? And of course, I mean, he's Jones. They have the notes, formula sheets, whatever you need. And yeah, it's not no slight to the institute. They provide a very, very solid chunk of information and a very structured syllabus for you. But of course, depending on your learning style, if you're not somebody who likes reading so much, listening to the videos of the prep providers using their resources. I myself sometimes in traffic, I'll throw on a video, just listening to the audio of it. I mightn't be, fully grasping it in the moment, but I know somewhere in my subconscious, some words are sticking and I'll be reading later and I'm like, oh, I hear this early any day. So yeah, prep providers, thumbs up from me.
So I want to throw now to Pernel, given his experience as a lecturer. Is there any particular topic or skill set that you find students in particular underestimate when it comes to level one?
Yeah, I think definitely ethics. I feel like ethics is one that is very much underestimated because you say, well, how hard could it be? I'm an ethical person. I'm going to read this, I'll pass. And then when you start to go through the questions for yourself, or even in the exam, even if you study it, it still forces you to engage with the material. So I think that definitely ethics is one that you may not have been taught throughout your school life, but you assume that what you learned from your parents and from various institutions that you'd have gone to, that would have prepared you for it. So I think definitely ethics is one that students and candidates definitely underestimate. And secondly, I feel like financial statement analysis maybe, because again, people think as accounts, how hard could it be? But they tell you how hard it could be. They show you how hard it could be for sure. So I think that definitely those two, and anything about the financial statement analysis is that building a strong foundation in level one kind of helps prepare you for a lot of level two, not just financial statement analysis in level two, but the other topic areas also build off of the foundation that you would have built using that financial statement analysis. So I think that to me, those are the two topics where I think that students really and truly underestimate, but in particular, I see ethics. That one, I really wouldn't recommend underestimating it.
So I'm glad you mentioned that because ethics actually has the highest weight in the exam, and is often rumored to be, even if you do well in all the other topics, the one topic that you don't want to do bad in is ethics, right? So I think that should be something that candidates really pay attention to. Because as Pernell said, it may seem easy, but when they give you different scenarios, like all of the answers seem plausible, right? Does anyone have any specific strategies of how they dealt with ethics in particular that they want to share?
Mine was just cramming the information, I'll be honest with you. That was my weakest, in my view, my weakest topic. So given the volume of the content, but I mean, some of you are now probably going to register for CFA level one, but ethics is basically the biggest section and a lot of manual reading. You can't video your way through that one, sadly. So you kind of have to read, you kind of have to look at the examples, you're going to have to practice questions. So what I did was, all right, 2 weeks prior to the exam, well, I mean, I did ethics prior to this, but on a deep dive level, I focused heavily on the ethics section, such that for the exam, all right, that it was one of my best performing sections. So, yeah.
Okay. And as you mentioned, doing questions and things like that, how should a candidate balance studying the material, doing practice questions, as well as doing mock exams? Is it that you left the mock exams closer to the time of the exam, or you did it early to kind of get a feel of the questions to kind of help you study in a more pointed fashion?
So what I did, at least for level one, I didn't know what CFA, a real CFA exam was like. I actually just opened the mock exam and see, all right, let's at least try to see where I land and, maybe I'm good at this. And well, that was a bad idea. I freaked myself out. Bad, really bad. And then I guess then pushed really hard to study and learn the topics at least I was weekend. But what I would say is your balance here between readings and practice questions and the mock exams. Every topic is new to you. I mean, some of you would have experience in financial statement analysis or economics prior. Focus more so on the practice questions because you kind of should be familiar with most of the content. Maybe CFA introduces a few new things so you can go through the LOSs and see what's new. and then I guess focus on the practice questions after. And well, I guess if something is totally new to you, ethics will very likely be because it's unique examples. Yeah, you have to do the readings.
Okay. And Savio, in terms of the mock exams in particular, around what time did you start doing it, and how many mock exams do you think is enough, quote unquote?
So in terms of the time frame, the sweet spot that I found was at least like 2 months before the exam is when you'd want to start doing mock exams, right? The reason being is that at that point, depending on the time that you built and made for yourself, you'd have already completed all the formative learning in the study process, right? You've already built the foundation. And I think at that point is a sweet spot in just doing a couple mock exams just to, just get to the summative side now and seeing and evaluating where you are, identifying the gaps in your knowledge where you need to perhaps do some more reviews on, do some more practice questions on. But yeah, that 2 months 2 months before the exam date, I would say is the best time. And I guess in terms of how much mock exams to do, speaking in my experience, I found that there was a bit of like diminishing returns with it because they say to do as much as you can, right? That's what's rumored. That's what I guess a consensus is. But in my experience, it got to a point where just doing mock exams over and over and over, you get up to like 5, 6 mock exams, you start to get less benefit of doing the other one, right? And I noticed that point in my experience when one, I just felt burnt out watching the same questions over and over and over and over, number one. And I found myself just making silly errors, silly mistakes that I would normally make on a fresh mind. And just when you're at a point where you've clearly identified which areas you need to review, because it comes a point where after doing all these mock exams, you see a trend in the errors that you make, and the trend is, I guess, it's the topics that are very similar. You more frequently get questions wrong in those specific areas. So at that point, it's just, and of course, with starting it at that time frame, about 2 months before, you give yourself enough time to just go over these topic areas that you found in doing the practice questions. So yeah, that's what I'll say for that.
Thanks, Savio. And with respect to preparation, so um, someone may have registered, they may have studied, but coming up close to the exam, they just feel like they're just not prepared to do the exam. Would you advise somebody who feels that they're not prepared to defer or
Mhm.
just go through with it?
Um,
It's up to anyone. Yeah.
sure. So as I'll just answer as I'm here. So two things to that. The first one is that I mean it's a cliche saying, but you miss all the shots you don't take, right? Granted that you may not feel you are prepared. You would have done some preparation unless you just did nothing for the entire time, right? But regardless of where you feel, there's no harm at all in just showing up on exam day and giving your best shot, right? Um, and there's only two things could happen. Two wins in my book, right? First one is you pass, you're good, you get your claps, you go and drink after, cool. If you don't pass, it's just an expensive mock exam. And that's a saying that I heard sometime a while ago that kind of changed my perspective on the fear of failing, right? If you don't pass, it's just an expensive mock. You could always retake it, right? The second thing is that is a statistic that I read a while ago that I can't remember the exact number, but there's actually a higher likelihood of you failing the exam if you defer, right? So that's why they always say that, son, try your best not to defer, essentially.
So actually, the last cycle of level one, the pass rate was 29% among persons who had deferred, whereas the overall pass rate was 41. So there's at least statistical evidence that you're less likely to pass by deferring. And that's something that the Institute actually encourages students to not defer. Yeah. So I want to take us now to the actual exam day, D-Day, right? So Pernel, what are some of the mistakes that candidates can make on the day of the exam, even if they, prepared properly for the exam? What are
I
some things
think
they should know on the day?
um to me on exam day, I mean they give you the checklist of items. So to me is of course to get enough rest the night before. It's not about trying to cram anymore. I mean, I have been guilty of cramming on the morning of exam, but to me, the best thing to do is to get a good night's rest. And to me, the second mistake is that people don't back themselves, right? To me, people go into the exam already saying, I feel I'm gonna fail, right? And to me, that is, if you go into the exam by yourself, so you only have yourself in the exam room, and you are the only person you have there for yourself, and you doubting yourself, to me, it's like you already lose, right? It's not to go into the whole, to me, there is a mental side of the exam, and to me, and this is important for persons going into the exam room to be confident in their preparation, confident in all they have done so far, and to believe that they would have done enough to pass. Because to me, if you go in thinking otherwise, then you begin to doubt yourself with the various answers, it affects you on the day. So to me, a key thing I see people making a mistake with is not really in terms of like forgetting your form of identification or forgetting your calculator. To me, it's more so going into the exam with a mindset that I'm going to fail this exam or I don't feel prepared for it. So even when I went to the exam, feeling like I didn't prepare enough, I'll say, all right, I have this. And to me, that helps me to approach the exam with confidence. And to me, increases my likelihood of making the better choices. Whether or not that happened for real, then that's a different story. But yeah, to me, that's the mistakes that I see students make.
Thanks, Pernel. And Marc, CFA is notorious for giving answers that are very close to each other. So, as I mentioned before, it's multiple choice, but you have three options. So, in a normal university exam, you may get two answers that are sort of close and then one throwaway answer that not linked to the other two. But with CFA, you may actually get three answers that are fairly close to each other. So I know this is not a scientific thing, but do you have any advice for candidates who may be torn between two answers on the exam?
I'll give a non-scientific answer, pray. But but jokes aside, what I used to do, at least for the numerical questions, which is most of the questions on level one, you let's say you ask to compute, just oversimplifying it here, price to earnings. You are given a few figures, you are given a case, you should at least have an idea of the inputs required to get a PE of 11, 13. So look at the earnings that you would require to get a PE of 11 and 13, see what's reasonable relative to the case. I guess just look for that reasonableness if possible and work it backwards to see if you can get what's in the question itself. That helped me. I did it a few times, at least in level 2. I recall vividly doing this, and it worked, I guess. So yeah, I mean, other than prayer, that's my best guess.
And it's multiple choice, right? So even if you're not 100% sure, you're still in with a chance, right? Just one factor is multiple choice, right? In terms of managing time, did anyone have any challenges with respect to running out of time or at a point in the exam coming close to the end, you realize you have quite a few questions to answer and you just, what was it, if that happened, what did you do? Did you just, mark whatever reading the question, or was it the case of you had time to spare, or it was at least fairly sufficient to review the answers that you submitted? And I say anyone.
I don't mind. To me, like in terms of how I would approach it, is like I always try to do the questions I knew well one time. Like I'll go through the exam, like if I know the answer, answer it one time, and not try to stick on any one question until like the end, because it might, let's say the first set of questions catch you and it tie up for the whole exam for like a good block of time, and the questions right after you knew, and if you just had a 2 minutes, you could have put enough effort behind it. So I try to tackle the questions that I knew well one time, try not to doubt myself, and in checking over, maybe then I'll see what I missed. So to me, it's not to try to, like you might say, okay, I remember this if I think long enough. But to me, just come back to it. You could think your brain will do it in the background while you go through the rest of the question. So to me, that's what helped me in terms of ensuring that sufficient time. And then that allowed me to have sufficient time to check over after. And if I was to doubt myself, then to do the reasonableness checks like Marc had suggested before.
Thanks, Pernel. So walking out the exam now. So you finish and you're walking out. Now, for me, to be honest, I never walk out an exam feeling so uncertain about the result. I kind of, give myself a pep talk as multiple choice, so I still want a chance. Um, but that was hands down the most difficult exam. Now, most people think level two is the most challenging level, but for me, it was level one because I felt like I didn't, like, kind of underestimated. But after getting that experience and that shock, kind of took it more seriously for the other levels. But I just want to get a feel from you all. What was the feeling walking out of the exam, and was it what you thought it would have been?
I can take this one. Barring, I guess when I passed level two, because that was the only time in my life where I knew I passed an exam, right? But for one and three, and I think it goes for the vast majority, maybe 99.9% of people, you'd never walk out a CFA exam feeling good whatsoever. You always have some pit in your stomach. You're always remembering, hey, but put age should I be thing, and everybody's going through the same thing. And CFA is no stranger to that kind of thinking, right? Um, but in terms of if it was what I expected, that aside, I mean, with the months of studying and preparation that you did leading up to the exam, you know what's coming at the end of it all, right? And walking out to the exam after having completed it, when you just think about how much hours you just put in that exam room, sitting behind the computer answering questions, when you look at it holistically, it is exactly what you would expect because, I mean, again, it's months of studying that went into it. So the law of equivalent exchange, something of that caliber is what you would expect, right? But again, I mean, when you guys listening do write the exam, which I hope you do, I hope you pass everything. Do not be alarmed that when you walk out the exam room, you're telling yourself, "But I don't know." That's a very common thing, I would say.
Thanks, Savio. Now, I just want to close off, at least in terms of this part of the discussion, to speak a little about the newest component of the CFA exam, and that has to do with the practical skills module, which was introduced in 2024. So Savio, being the newest charter holder and the one who would have experience what it's like in terms of the practical skills module, could you share with the persons on the call, what exactly it's about, what is required, how much time it takes, and when do candidates need to complete it?
Yeah, sure. So, granted that I only would have done it for level two and three, it's the same across the board, right? What it is the institute would have created, of course, I mean this practical skills module, and as the name implies, it uses a combination of real world examples, videos, questions, and guided practice, to give you some exposure on how to actually apply what you've learned, certain topics that, from what you've learned in the syllabus and actually applying it practically and in real life usage, right? Um, on the institute, they give guidance that it takes about 10 to 20 hours, depending on how quickly you move through the content, right? And tidbits, I believe, for level one, the two, I guess, modules that you can choose from is financial modeling and an intro to Python programming, right? The one thing to me because I mean, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but there's a lot of, I guess, confusion and worry surrounding it, is how and how much time I guess you have to complete it, right? And I guess the assuring thing is that as long as you complete it before the results day, right? And what that means is that you don't have to worry like me and other people that apart from having to study for the exam, I also have to complete this practical skills module before the exam day. That's not the case at all. You have that entire approximately 2 months after you write the exam to devote to, completing the skills module. As I said, it takes 10 to 20 hours depending on how you go through it. And just off of the experience of using it for level two and level three, it was genuinely a very, very beautiful addition to the CFA curriculum, right? Because I mean, it's one thing to have the book sense, the knowledge that they teach you, but being able to translate that into actual practice in your real life use, real life work, um, that's something that's genuinely of a significant value add in my opinion.
Thanks, Savio. I think that kind of wraps up the first session. So now we want to jump into the Q&A. So we want to get any questions from the audience. I'm looking at the chat here. I'm seeing that we have some questions in. So I'm seeing, what are the benefits and employment opportunities locally for the additional time and financial expense attaining CFA? Anyone want to say that one?
I see nobody else on mute, but I think that from my own personal experience and the experience I have seen, at least empirically from those around me, is that there is a benefit, right? You can see someone get the charter, and within you see some kind of change on their LinkedIn profile within some period of time, right? It's not a guarantee. That's the thing. Like, say if it doesn't say we guarantee you that you get the charter, and within 1 month you're gonna get promoted. CFA in and of itself is not the only that you need, I'd say, to move through your career. Of course, there are other skills to be developed. Savio did mention that, of course, they added the practice skills module to kind of fill that gap in terms of other skills that are necessary. But even while doing CFA, it is important, of course, to build your other skill sets, like presenting, your ability to network. There are other skills that I think that you also have to look at. It's not that CFA in and of itself will lead to a promotion. I think, at least from my experience, and I think even the other guys on the call here, they would have seen a benefit and within their own careers from pursuing the charter. But it also is not us saying that it is guaranteed that you get the charter. But if you look at the director of all the charter holders in Trinidad and Tobago, you look at their LinkedIn's and you look at when they got the charter and their career after that, you will see the general trajectory being upward, right? Whether or not it's solely due to CFA is one thing, but I do believe that CFA does help build your career because of what you learn throughout the experience allows you to just approach. It builds your discipline, it builds your knowledge, it just builds all those different things. I think that all augur well for a stronger career. But to say it guarantees one is where I really want to say that, especially when we record it.
Thanks, Pernel.
I'll support what Pernel said here. It of course doesn't guarantee it. It definitely helped me in my career. I know it helped these gentlemen on the call. But I think having the charter speaks to you, your soft skills also, in the sense that it speaks to your discipline, it speaks to your work ethic, it speaks to you having a dedication and focus to commit to something that is fairly difficult and time consuming. And those qualities are respected by the industry. And well, if you work in finance, you're likely to run into a CFA charter holder, and the CFA charter holder knows the work that goes into it. So by definition, they understand, all right, this person at least has a fairly high level of work ethic, dedication. So while it isn't a guarantee, it helps show that, all right, you are dedicated, you have those soft skills. And of course, the technicals are a great plus.
Thanks, Marc. I'm seeing a question with respect to the cost, so I think I could take that one. So when registering for the CFA exam, there's typically two windows in terms of an early registration and a normal registration. The early registration is typically cheaper. So I believe right now the cost for doing level 1 is $1140 US, and the regular registration is about $1,500. So in comparison to, let's say, an MBA, the CFA program is actually pretty inexpensive when comparing. And in addition to that, there's also some scholarships that are available. So locally, it doesn't come through the society itself. You can go straight to the CFA Institute website. One of the more popular scholarships available is the Access Scholarship. It's typically means tested, so you have a little application to do. But if you are successful with that application, I think it reduces the cost to about $400 US, right? Someone asked about the pass mark.
I could jump in for that one, Andrew. So the CFA Institute, they don't publish a set pass mark or pass grade like that. There's rumors that circulate on what they think the pass mark is for each level, but as I've just said, it's just rumors, right? what they do, and it varies for exam and even individually within a specific window. So say you write in the January window with your friend, the two of you may face different pass marks. What I mean by that is that they use a method, I forgot the name of it, it's a scientific method, but basically they take up a panel of charter holders and subject matter experts, and they evaluate each paper, each question, I should say, and determine what a competent candidate, I guess, would score if they were to complete this question. And in doing so, they ensure, I guess, fairness across every paper that someone writes in the exam, essentially, right? So to say that within a specific window, say in a January window for level one or whatever the case is, that the pass mark is X%, that's not the case at all. It's just, it's something that's set systematically by, again, a board of experts, and they determine it for each paper depending. So if you have a more, I guess, difficult paper, you'd have a lower mark. If there's a less difficult paper, there's a higher mark. It varies.
Yeah.
One thing you do know
Um,
is the at least weight, so um allocations towards your passing grade for each section. So like level one, I believe, is FS, financial statement and analysis, and ethics as your highest weightings. So
correct.
I mean, by definition, you should be able to I guess know what to focus on.
So we have a question in terms of the actual paper itself. Is it, do you get any paper for work-ins or is it fully online? So in my time, it was completely a paper-based exam. So there was paper and a bubble sheet to put in your answers. But in recent years, has gone completely computerized. So for the guys who would have written it more recently, could you shed some light in terms of uh, ability to do work-ins or if everything is computer-based?
You get like a small erasable board, two of them, I think, right? To do your workings on. That's basically it. So you do have writing material, but you don't get to keep, right? You have to give it back in after.
Someone is asking if you could just share your personal experience. I think we kind of touched on it, Pernel. I don't know if Mark, in terms of how it helps shape your career, expand your opportunities. I know we kind of touched on it, but just anything further.
Yeah, I mean, each level that I passed, actually, even doing level one would have gotten me my first like start in a finance firm. And then when I passed level one, I got picked up by well, the firm that I currently work at. Past level two, got promoted into portfolio manager role. And level three, I didn't get the exact promotion as I passed, but financial benefits came. And then a few months later, yeah. So indirectly, yes, I would say it contributed, but as Pernel noted before, it isn't the core reason you progress in your career. It's just a very good add-on.
Thanks, Mark. We have a question with respect to how the exam is split. So they're asking if they split it evenly. So we have 10 topics. So they're asking if the first 5 topics is tested in the morning or the first session, and then the other 5 in the evening, or is it mixed up? All 10 topics can come in the first session as well as in the second.
Yeah, to answer that question, well, from my experience, it's completely randomized. So it's not that they have 5 topics in the morning and then the next 5 in the afternoon, anything like that. You can get any topic at any time, any session. It's completely random.
Yeah, that was my experience as well back in 2015, right? Seeing another question here, um, asking if you believe there is anything from the new foundation certificate that the CFA Institute offers that could be applied to, let's say, level one. Now, I don't know if anyone here has done the foundation certificate, so it might be a little difficult to speak on it, but any educated guesses that it would be useful?
I have taken a look. Mark, I'm not sure. Mark, have you done it? I don't want to start to
No,
speak
I
on it.
haven't, but I was going to say that one of my staff did it, but you go ahead, please.
No, well, you could, yeah, you might be better. I just know it from looking at the curriculum and possibly trying to integrate it with, yeah. So you could probably answer this better than me.
No worries. Yeah, so one of my coworkers, they would have done the foundation certificate, and following that, they would have registered for level 1 and found it a lot easier. They came from I believe, a math background, and then progressed into the foundations, then progressed into level 1. So yeah, I guess it should help you, ideally.
Okay, great. So I'm not seeing any further questions. So I don't know if anyone on the call has any further questions. If not, I'll just ask each of the panelists just if you have any final advice for either a candidate currently registered for the exam or somebody contemplating doing the CFA program.
Hi, good evening. I have a few questions for you. So I just want to know if it's worth it to buy MCQ banks, if any of y'all use that or no.
I didn't buy any, but I mean, when it came to level 2 and level 3, if you use like one of the prep providers, you do get additional questions. But so like when I did level 1, at least there were a lot of questions from their Q bank. I'm not sure what's the structure now. I heard about you have to pay possibly for the Q bank. I'm not too sure if that's how it is right now, but not the CFA online Q bank was sufficient for me. I tried to do all of the questions for level 1. Like level 1, I think I did the most Q bank questions, and that's what helped me a lot. So yeah, if you do all those questions online and then you have like another 2 months, then it may add some value. But even then, as Savio spoke about earlier, the mock exam, you don't want to also burn yourself out where you're almost over preparing for the exam too. So to me, from my personal experience, the CFA online questions were sufficient. If you do go to a prep provider, you get even more questions there. To me, that would be sufficient unless you really need that practice.
Okay, noted. Also, I just want to know how you guys went about like reviewing the topics. So I know it's a lot of content, so how do you go back and review those in a sense?
That's a good question. So one, notes, you jot down your key notes for your key points, your key formulas. Some of your prep providers and even the institute provide like a formula sheet. So there are summaries available, notes available if you choose to use the institute or the prep provider. However, what just using, again, it's like a marketing campaign, I feel like, but Marc Meldrum used to have a summary video at the end, as an option for each topic. So it's like a 5-minute, 10-minute gist of, all right, what did he cover? So that's what I kind of used to use if I forgot a topic by chance.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. So just one thing I like to add as well to that answer, right? Same experience on my end, but something that I would have done closer to the end of the road was leveraging AI, right? And I want to, I guess, stress how beneficial it was for me in my experience, right? Um, Literally, I would pick up my phone and just say, "Hey, Gemini, I need you to act like a financial advisor with so and so years experience in this and that." And I would literally have conversations with AI talking about specific topics and literally and just talking it out and literally just talking through a topic. In doing that, you actually jog your brain in a way that you're able to see certain gaps in your knowledge. So if you find yourself kind of slacking on how to explain something, you're uncovering a weak point in your knowledge, right? So key point to that answer being you also have AI, the times that we live in, using that as a tool to help in your study sessions as well. It acts as a very good tutor from my experience in using it for the preparation.
Okay, thanks. Okay, one last question. I just want to know if you guys could list out all the exam prep providers in the chat, if it's possible.
There's a link on CFA website. They have a list of approved prep providers. So we could probably try it. We could try to find the link, but for us to list out all that will take us a little while. But there's I'm gonna post it in the yeah. So these are the prep providers and then you can do your different filters and all that accordingly.
Is it by chance, is there like a preferred one, or is it really just difference in cost, but they would all give a pretty relative amount of practice?
So we I would say that I would suggest or encourage doing a lot of do some form of research. So I use Reddit a lot during my CFA time to find like, okay, who would have been the best prep providers. I'd have looked at reviews online and they all point to the same person. So I would suggest yeah, you could just do a little. That might not be the best person for you. Right? I read reviews and I was like, okay, this person aligns with how I like to study, and I went with that prep provider.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I looked at affordability, and thankfully I found the same provider as Pernel and Savio. So, you know.
Thanks, guys. So if there are no further questions, just any final thoughts? As I said, any advice for any level 1 candidates we might have in the call, or anybody thinking about doing the CFA program? Start with you, Savio, and then Marc, and then Pernel.
Sure, no problem. Final advice, I guess the most important thing from my experience that definitely helped me the most is working backwards from the exam day, as I would have mentioned earlier, and just getting a study plan out from the get-go and having a structure to your studying, right? It keeps you on track, keeps you on time, makes sure that you stick to what your specific goals, make sure that you don't come down to like about 2 weeks before the exam day realizing, wait, now I still have these practice questions to do, right? So literally just number one, just treating it very, very structured, right? Setting that out from the get-go. That's number one. Number two, in studying, especially when you're now starting, and you want to ensure that you're not just studying for just ticking off boxes, going down the syllabus. Okay, I finished quants, time to move on to economics, I finished that. You don't want to approach the studying like that at all. You want to make sure that your primary objective is to ensure that you get a deep understanding. You want to study to understand, and the benefit of that, aside from having the highest success rate at level 1, is that employing that study technique actually prepares you for how you need to study for level 2 and 3, because you can't just read through the syllabus for 2 and 3 and say, yeah, well, good. You can't do that whatsoever, right? So they want to ensure, number one, again, have the study plan. And number two, in my experience, ensure that you get every single topic you cover and understand down to first principles. And to me, that's, in my experience, the recipe for the successes.
Thanks, Savio. Marc?
Yeah, I mean, Savio covered a good bit of my thoughts, but one thing that I would add that helped me, well, not everyone would, I guess, doing CFA works in a finance or banking environment to apply what you learn, but at least start following finance news, whatever. I mean, there's so much sources out there now, whether it's YouTube or your various news articles. So Bloomberg, whether it's the Instagram page or something, at least you get some free finance content that you can, I guess, follow, use what you learn in CFA and apply it to what these guys are saying. On YouTube, you can also access a few Bloomberg videos. There's weekly market wraps. I would urge you to watch them. So yeah, trying to also look at the practical aspects and see how CFA fits into the real world, because what CFA is a practical qualification. Most of it can be applied to your day-to-day, I mean, in a finance perspective. So yeah, try to make it as integrated into your life as possible. Learn it and live it.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those two guys already covered. I think the key parts. The only thing I like to add, I guess, is what I said before in terms of like just that focus on consistency, and understanding it's not always going to be perfect. There may be periods where work really ramps up, and you might think get to cover as much as you want to, but not to be too hard on yourself. Say, oh my gosh, I'm a week behind my schedule now, or I'm 5 hours behind my schedule. Like, don't be too hard on yourself. So allow yourself some breathing room, and to that point also to find ways to like decompress. If you would like to go to the gym, you go for a walk. Like, I mean, that also helps. Like, even through my whole CFA journey, I found that I did better when I was like doing stuff like going to the gym, playing football, but rather than when I was just like all about the work. Because at the end of the day, it does take a toll on you. And to me, those things can help just increase your capacity to work. So taking 45 minutes off to go walk, to go get some coffee, like, those little things I think help increase your capacity to do more and to be more consistent. So I think that's just my final thoughts.
Thanks, Pernel. So I just want to thank all our esteemed speakers for taking the time, to share their experiences, insight, and advice with us today. I would also like to thank all of you on the call for spending your Friday evening into Friday night with us. We really hope that you found the session useful and informative. To all the level 1 candidates on the call, we wish you the best with respect to your upcoming exam. And please don't hesitate to reach out to the CFA Society if you need any support or have any questions along the way. So thank you again and good night.